Greetings and welcome to Phantom's Edge. This will be chapter 22 of this reading. Emperor Phytographs fought against Fleet Admiral Cornelius on the Armageddon, rapidly clashing blades as they motioned around the deck. Even with being focused on each other, the two took out their enemies nearby if they got too close. If a pirate neared the Fleet Admiral, Cornelius quickly swung his blade and killed them. If a bureaucracy soldier neared the Emperor, Phytographs would smash them with either Kekai or Kokai. The warriors insanely fought along the ship as they started breaking off parts of the vessel, immobilizing it from its position. They busted the steering column and forced the mainsail to fall, which broke down a few others before crashing into the deck itself. While still battling for dominance, Phytographs yelled, "You want to know why I find your pathetic attempt at defeating me to be a joke, Admiral? Shut your furry mouth. It's because those blades he gave you are not Empire material. He once tried to make a blade of his own creation as a means to overpower Kekai and Kokai, but failed." Phytographs swung down hard with his right hand blade, shattering the Hume's left hand sword into pieces as he ended with, "Miserably." As part of the tip was bouncing up, Cornelius safely kicked the blade towards Phytographs and was able to slice Lepore's left arm. It was deep, but not too damaging, allowing the Emperor to continue holding his weapon for a little while longer. The Fleet Admiral tossed his left weapon's handle aside, readying against the Lepore still, as he yelled, "It's over for you, Phytographs. Just give up. The bureaucracy of Phyle will prevail." Phytographs spun his weapons around a few times, hardly moving his arms, then held them forwards once more as he responded, "Only when I'm dead." The two clashed blades. Then, as they were trying to push against one another, Cornelius viciously said, "Happy to oblige." The fighters pushed back and began swinging their blades faster, causing sparks to fly out from their position. One spark ignited a barrel of gunpowder, exploding to break out part of the port side of the ship and also catching the place on fire. Phytographs got a few gouges into the Fleet Admiral's torso, while Cornelius was able to get several cuts along the Emperor's appendages. The sword struck hard, cracking the Hume's weaponry, bringing his defeat near. However, the Fleet Admiral had one last trick up his sleeve. Cornelius waited for one swing that he knew he could dodge, jumping back a few feet, then quickly reached for his pistol with his left hand. He aimed for Phytographs' head, yet the Emperor used Kekai to deflect the bullet. Unfortunately, the distance was close enough that the force of the pistol's projectile was able to break the weapon out of the Lepore's grasp. The sword flipped over and back from the Emperor, tossed out from the ship and into the ocean. Phytographs went to face where the blade was thrown and called out, "Kekai!" His back turned, the Emperor was defenseless to the sneak attack that Cornelius used against him. The Fleet Admiral ran up and stabbed through Lepore's torso and up through the heart. Cornelius twisted the weapon with both hands, then said, "See you in hell, vermin." To what should have been a fatal wound, the Emperor continued to survive. The Fleet Admiral swung his blade out, turning to kill the remaining pirates on his falling ship as he believed he had defeated the Lepore. Phytographs dropped to his right knee, still looking out to his lost relic of a sword once held in his ancestor's hands. Holding onto the railing, Phytographs gasped, "Guy, how could I have lost you?" The Lepore then stood up, gripping Kokai harder in his left hand, while turning to those on the broken vessel. He raised the blade overhead and shouted, "For royalty!" Phytographs swung down and slammed his blade halfway into the deck of the ship, actually sending out a grand force that ripped through the vessel to strike and kill all but one of the soldiers on the ship. The remaining warrior was Fleet Admiral Cornelius, who barely missed being struck by the ominous ability from the Emperor. The bureaucracy soldier turned to face the Lepore and asked, "What the? He's still alive? What just happened? How did he do that?" Phytographs readied Kokai backhanded as he jolted for his final foe, uncaring that he just set the vessel into a collapsing voyage to the bottom of the sea. The two fought once more, the Fleet Admiral just trying to keep his stance to block the Emperor's fast and powerful attacks as they motioned again around the beaten ship. Cornelius was frightened that his enemy was still standing, even with his clean stab through the heart. He tried to stand on the ship, with it starting to part from the massive damage it took, barely missing falling into the ocean several times. However, it wasn't long before the stern began tilting back, completely severed from the rest of the sinking vessel. As the Armageddon leaned, Cornelius was being backed towards the broken deck by Phytograss. The Emperor's rage made his swings grow more powerful, yet also made him ignore his pain and his demise. He knew he was struck in the heart, but his will was so strong it kept him going. Yet the more he did, the more he bled out. He could have retreated and found a way to seal his wound, possibly live a little longer and better, but he was too focused on defeating his opponent, wanting revenge for losing a family heirloom. Phytograss got the Hume just at the edge of the ship, ready to fall, where he moved to get his last and fatal swing. Cornelius watched Kokai be raised, knowing even if he tried to block the attack, it would go through his weapon and kill him. However, he took one last step back without realizing where he was and plummeted. The Lepore swung down just as the Hume fell, the force used actually throwing himself forward as he accidentally jumped over the edge. The two warriors amazingly landed inside the stern, yet were trapped and had no way out to safety. However, that didn't concern Phytograss. The Lepore wanted Cornelius dead at any and all cost. Unfortunately, having swung so hard to strike his foe, the Emperor's blade was misguided and lost from his grip. Kokai was also tossed at sea, leaving the Lepore unarmed. Of course, his immense strength could easily compensate for that simple mistake. When the two fell into the lower deck of the stern, they landed hard and broke through the very back. Cornelius landed on his right side and cracked all his bones in his right arm, but still had his weapon in hand. Phytograss, though, landed on his back and was stabbed again. There were now 3 new wounds. One was another blade of a random soldier's sword, which pierced through his left shoulder. The second was a broken piece of wood, stabbed through his right thigh. Last was a broken piece of glass, long enough to go through his lower back and out his stomach. Shockingly, the Lepore was still alive. Both soldiers painfully motioned up from the ship's wreckage, an inch of water covering the wall they stood on, moving to face each other once more. Phytograss ignored his wounds, wouldn't even break off the ends sticking out, and continued towards his enemy. With his arm cracked, Cornelius raised his weapon against the Emperor as he stepped back and asked, "What the hell are you? Why won't you just die?" Phytograss first tried to punch the Hume with his left fist, hardly able to do so, where Cornelius dodged it by shimmying to the left and swinging his blade to cut diagonally across the Lepore's forearm. The Hume then went for another stab, but the Lepore swung his right arm to force the weapon aside and out of the bureau soldier's hands, unfortunately slicing himself as well. The blade stuck into a stud, nearly 7 inches deep. The fleet admiral tried to motion to retrieve his weapon, but the Emperor lunged forward and tackled the soldier to the floor. He rammed the Hume with his right shoulder, then knelt over the man as he went to punch with his right fist. Cornelius avoided the first 2 swings, then was struck by the third as he moved to kick the Lepore off. Phytograss fell back, getting another broken piece of wood stuck in his upper back, yet still went to stand against his foe. With this opening, the fleet admiral ran to regain his weapon, while the Emperor chased the soldier down. In his desperate and panicked attempt to fend off the Lepore, Cornelius yanked his weapon out and used the motion to spin around to face his opponent. The Hume actually sliced the Lepore across the face, cutting both eyes to blind the insane fighter. Phytograss stepped back from the Bjarxi soldier, giving Cornelius one final stand to take down the Emperor. With a foot of water and rising, the soldier jolted to both stab his weapon into the Lepore's heart again and tackle him to the floor. The blade through and through, the sword was jammed into the wood yet again and kept the Lepore pinned. His life continuing to linger on, Phytograss coughed up some blood and reached into his right pants pocket. However, Cornelius used his right foot to kick the Emperor's arm out, where a small item was tossed aside. The item thrown was a jewelry box, a copy of what Kaio tried to give Jacqueline. The top was forced open and the lid broke off, making the tune play and never able to stop, fixed to forever play. Fleet Admiral heard the tune and was confused by its sound, wondering why it was necessary for the Lepore to grab that item. He walked over and went to pick it up, finding it to be a jewelry box. Yet after a quick examination, the Hume found an etching at the bottom that said, "Kaboom." Cornelius pondered for a moment, then noticed the Emperor laughing as he floated over the now 1.5 foot deep salt water. Photographs knew of the sound coming from the box and knew of what it meant, leaving him to believe he had finally won the battle. All there was to do was laugh, with there being nothing the bureaucracy could do to win the war. Cornelius turned back to the box, then came to a conclusion of what it held as he dropped it in the water. At the same time, he stepped back and said, "It's a bomb." The stern had another break in its hull, making the vessel sink faster, where the fleet admiral found he was not going to make it out of the ship by climbing out with the rushing water pouring down. He knew he could just swim, but with his recent discovery, there wasn't enough time. So with that, he pulled out a cigar and lit it to take only a single puff. The box calmly floated in the water, uncaring to any driftwood that neared. The first round of the gentle tune played on, going for a full minute as it moved with the waves of the ocean to be in between the two soldiers. Then, as the song reached its end, the mechanism indeed ignited and blew apart the stern completely, leaving the ship to be no more and any who were still alive on it dead from the explosion. This concludes the reading of Chapter 22. Thank you all for watching and listening. If you like what you've seen and heard, be sure to check out my other two novels, Lore of the Endowment and Ryo the Demon Slayer. Link will be in the description below. Other than that, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you again next week reading Chapter 23.